Chapter 115. You're so energetic early in the morning. However, her enthusiasm was annoying. It was like deliberately disturbing other people's good mood. For example, Yuan Xiaoqiao, who had eaten happily before and didn't feel uncomfortable, felt a little uncomfortable at this moment. It seemed that she had eaten too much and wanted to vomit. Jingwan was a little amused by her exaggerated expression. This mighty group of people poured into the Begonia elegant house. The place, which was spacious at first, seemed to become narrow all of a sudden. Some of these people had been to Jingwan's place before, but most of them were here for the first time. However, even if they were not here for the first time, they were still full of surprise and envy at Jingwan's campus. Then, some people, perhaps out of habit or because they really felt that the flowers were beautiful, reached out to pick them. When Jingwan just came to the capital city, this courtyard had been ruined once. At that time, Jingwan, as the host, didn't say anything, but Yuan Xiaoqiao couldn't stand it. She couldn't help it again. Wan, I heard that the 18 scholar flowers you gave to great elder princesses Wang Yao last time were very precious. They were worth at least 10,000 taels of silver. I say, the flowers in your courtyard are so beautiful. Any one of them should be worth a lot of money. The girl who reached out to pick the flowers couldn't help shaking her hands. Those who saw her actions more or less looked at her with a different meaning. Perhaps they were worried that the flowers were also expensive, or they had a look of mockery on their faces, as if they thought that she was just a shallow person. However, many people probably felt lucky that they didn't do it. Jingwan naturally saw through Yuan Xiaoqiao's intention. She smiled and said, "It's not so precious, but I'm confident that it should be worth hundreds of taels of silver at least if it's sold." Alas, Wan, you're probably the only one who can do this. If it were other people's flowers, they would probably think that it's just a flower. It's no big deal to break it. If it's broken, then so be it. It's not a big deal. I'll just repair it myself later. Yuan Xiaoqiao glanced at her. You're the only one who doesn't care. If it were me, my heart would ache. Gardening is about having fun. If it's mixed with other things, it'll be tacky. Yuan Xiaoqiao sneered at her. Wan, if you want to put it that way, why don't you cut some flowers for us to play with while it's still early? That way, we won't waste the good stuff. Sure. Jingwan nodded. When she asked the maid to get the scissors and other things, she glanced at Luo Jingying. If it were any other time, she would have come out to smooth things over and pretend to be a good person. However, Yuan Xiaoqiao mentioned 18 scholars and how the flower arrangement was lost. She was probably the last person who wanted to be mentioned. The girl who broke the flower before breathed a sigh of relief. However, the flower in her hand made her feel like a hot potato. It was hot to hold it, but it was even more inadvisable to throw it away. Jingwan walked to her with the scissors and took the flower from her hand. You have good taste. She trimmed it slightly and reached out to pin it on the girl's head. It's very beautiful. It suits you very well. She smiled faintly. The girl's cheeks reddened even more. She murmured, "Thank you." Jingwan cut another flower at the side and a small branch with 2 buds. She cut the extra branches and put them on the tray held by the maid. Then, she glanced at the girl's present and called the 2 sisters, one older and one younger, to help them put it on. "Ah, sister, you're so beautiful." The little girl, who was probably less than 10 years old, blinked her big eyes and said to her sister, "Sister, you're beautiful too." She reached out and pinched the little girl's face. Then, she squatted and thanked Jingwan. "You're welcome. What about the others? Is there anyone you like?" "Cousin, why don't you help us choose? I always feel that you'll choose more suitable for us." A little girl who was about 11 or 12 years old said to Jingwan with a smile. This was the girl from Third Aunt's family. Jingwan did not have much contact with her, but she seemed to be a very good girl. When the others heard her words, they all nodded in agreement. Most of them expressed that way. Even though she knew that some of them probably did not think that way, Jingwan did not intend to take care of their feelings. Just like what Yin Yang said, the most suitable flowers were the best. However, some people just liked the most expensive flowers. Some of them were probably the same. They would not look at the unknown flowers and would always stare at the expensive flowers and trees. For example, the Wei Zi in this courtyard. They did not think about whether they would be able to stand out if they wore that kind of flower. At this time, Jingwan was purely using it as a pastime. At the same time, she also prevented her courtyard from being damaged. Except for herself, every girl, including Luo Jingying, cut a living flower and a small branch for them. Everyone's flowers were very suitable, except for Luo Jingying, because Jingwan cut a Wei Zi for her, and it was the biggest and most beautiful one. I saw that fourth sister has been looking at this peony for a long time. I think she likes it very much. It's really beautiful. Luo Jingying's face was a little pale, but she could not say anything because her flower was the most expensive. It could be said that it was the best of the flowers. However, with such a big flower on her head, it completely covered the original hair ornament. It was as tacky as it could be. Many girls turned their heads and covered their mouths to laugh. Oh, fortunately, they did not think about that flower. Otherwise, they would be the laughing stock. Touching the flower on her head, it was really suitable for her to look good. It's really tacky for me to wear such a beautiful flower. I was looking at it just now, mainly because I think third sister is the most suitable one. Luo Jingying reached out and wanted to take the flower off her head, but then she found that there seemed to be thorns on the stem. If she took it off directly, her hair would be messed up. For a moment, she hated Jingwan very much. To be honest, the servants of the Luo family all thought that the fourth young lady was crazy. Now everyone in the Luo family knew that the third young lady and the fourth young lady did not get along well with each other. Since Great Elder Princess got married, they had completely fallen out with each other. The third young lady could not even save her face, but the fourth young lady insisted on getting involved. As a result, she lost face every time. Just like today, if it was not suitable for her, a large group of girls would not come here early in the morning. In the end, before she could say anything, she was shut up by 18 scholars. Now, she had embarrassed herself again. Fourth sister, do you think so? Okay, I'll have a try. Fourth sister, you don't have to take it off. Jingwan went to cut another flower. The size of the flower was not inferior to Luo Jingying's at all. Jingwan just casually moved the hair ornament on her head and put the flower on one side of her head. It's so beautiful. Yes, yes. The fourth young lady of the Luo family is a little better than the third young lady of the Luo family. But why do the same flowers look completely different? It wasn't difficult to understand, but it wasn't. There were only two reasons: the position of the flower and whether or not one had the temperament to suppress it. Jingwan undoubtedly had both. Luo Jingying, on the other hand, had a lot of accessories on her head, and Jingwan had chosen the right position. Furthermore, she had been locked up for so long that she looked like a delicate flower. How could she be able to support such a beautiful flower like the peony? Therefore, when the two of them wore the flower, the effect was completely different. Then, a notice came from outside, asking the girls to go for breakfast. Today's breakfast was already late, so they were really a little hungry. Jingwan and Yuan Xiaoqiao, who had already eaten breakfast, prepared to go and put on an act. In fact, the servants of Begonia House also went to fill their stomachs while Jingwan was cutting the flowers. Although they did not eat much, they would not starve like the other servants. Seeing this group of delicate girls appear, many of the women laughed. Oh, where did they go so early in the morning? All of them seemed to have become prettier. Then, the attentive people found that the flowers on their heads were just right, making up for their previous shortcomings. No matter whether it was the big, delicate flowers or the small, small flowers, they all complemented each other. Who did this? They can see the shortcomings of others at a glance and make up for it so easily. Their eyesight is really good. The girl walking in front did not say anything, and her eyes fell directly on Jingwan. Jingwan had a patient beside her who was walking slowly. By the time she was discovered, many people's gazes were focused on her. Jingwan gracefully squatted down to greet them. She smiled faintly and allowed them to size her up. Then she continued to walk. It was said that the more people there were, the more unique Jingwan was. Madame Luo is really good at teaching people. Is it because this girl has broken off the engagement? Maybe? Yes. The news that Jingwan broke off the engagement had slowly spread among these people. Naturally, there were so many people who wanted to take advantage of her. However, They did not know that Jingwan had already become a bargaining chip for some people. There was no possibility of them getting involved. After breakfast, they basically started to get busy again. Jingwan took advantage of the time when Yuan Xiaoqiao was ordered to stay by her mother to see Luo Jingbo. Luo Jingbo had already put on the red wedding dress, but there was a slight bruise around his eyes. It seemed that he did not sleep well last night, but his spirit was not bad. Because there were many people who were going to pick up the bride with him at this time, Jingwan naturally could not go in, so she asked someone to call him out. Luo Jingbo knew that his sister was looking for him. Naturally, he immediately left the people who might help him later and went out. Those people naturally did not want to. They flocked out, wanting to see who made him so anxious. Then they saw Jingwan from afar and stopped one by one. Chen Jingmin looked at Jingwan, who was smiling and talking to Luo Jingbo. He resisted the urge to cover his chest, but there was really no way to ignore the pain coming from there. She was such a beautiful person. If he hadn't had the chance to get her in the first place, perhaps he wouldn't have felt so bad. However, he had been so close to her. He was only one step away from marrying her, but he couldn't take that last step anymore. Many of them were Luo Jingbo's classmates and friends. It was the first time they saw Jingwan, so they could not help but ask who this girl was. Then, when they found out that she was Luo Jingbo's biological sister, some people couldn't help but curse Luo Jingbo. This bastard had hidden such a good-looking and well-mannered sister in his family. They really didn't know it all. Why should I let you know? Chen Jingmin's eyes were sharp, and he said indifferently. Then, he turned and left. Before, this person who came in third, although he looked a little cold, his words were still gentle. Why did he suddenly turn hostile? A group of people looked at each other in dismay. On the other side, Jingwan teased her brother. Although she was not as unscrupulous as his brothers, Luo Jingbo could not resist. Little sister, do you really want to do that? Not necessarily. You see the situation. Jingwan said to Luo Jingbo rather roguishly. Although she said so, he always felt that if he did not do as she said, the back of his neck would be a little cold. And little sister is right. A real man should boldly express what he has. Even if the situation does not allow, create a situation and do it. He said very righteously. Jingwan smiled and nodded. She was very satisfied with her brother's awareness. After Jingwan left, Luo Jingbo's face suddenly fell and wrinkled like a bitter gourd. He was going to be teased by that group of people again. However, in the face of his little sister's abuse of power, his brother's ridicule was nothing. After he went back, everyone saw that his expression was a little strange. However, his brothers knew more about the inside story. Luo Jingming smiled and patted him on the shoulder. What's wrong? Third sister gave you a difficult problem again? Second brother, don't be so obvious when you're gloating. Luo Jingming covered his mouth and coughed, but the smile in his eyes did not disappear. Now, what did third sister ask you to do? He looked like he was determined to get to the bottom of it. Second brother, you'll get married one day. Luo Jingbo threatened. However, Luo Jingming did not care at all. Don't hide it. We'll find out sooner or later. Tell us now, so that we can be mentally prepared. When the time comes, we won't be too surprised and lose our composure. How do you know what to do in public? I didn't know at first, but now I know. Hurry up and tell us. Luo Jingbo was annoyed. When the others heard Luo Jingming's words, they were also curious and urged him to tell them quickly. Luo Jingbo thought for a while. Anyway, they would know when it was time to pick up the bride. Thus he stammered and told them. Thus, everyone who heard was extremely surprised. Then, someone started to laugh. Brother Jingbo, I'm waiting for your performance. Time passed slowly. The people at the bridal party had all gathered, and it was almost time. Luo Jingbo flipped over and mounted his tall horse. He was filled with joy, anticipation, and a little uncontrollable excitement. Hey, Jingming, do you think your third brother will really do that later? He will, Luo Jingming said very confidently. How could his third brother go against his third sister's wishes? The people at the side could not help but click their tongues. That's true, but he's just expressing his admiration in public. The 10 miles of red dowry sent by the Duke Dingwa's mansion yesterday was really eye-opening and attracted countless people to watch. It was not much worse than the parade of the 3 people who passed the grand exam 2 days ago. Chapter 12. Yunting. How are the preparations for the wedding going? Li Honyuan leaned back in his chair. His body was relaxed with a bit of laziness. Coupled with his good looks, it was really pleasing to the eye. Even men couldn't help but take a few more glances. Replying to Wang Ye, everything is ready. The wedding date is set for 2 months later. Unfortunately, Fu Yunting was determined to be blind. It's too long. The wedding must be held before the end of the month. His dark eyes stared unblinkingly at Fu Yunting. Yes. There were only a few days left until the end of the month. Fu Yunting really wanted to roar at him. What was he trying to do? According to the awkward position of Wu Wanho, he might not be able to marry a decent wife for the rest of his life. He wasn't worried, so why was his master so worried? Could it be that this marriage has something to do with your great career? Were you afraid that a long delay would lead to unexpected changes? Li Honyuan casually threw a small flat box to him. A wedding gift? Many thanks to Wang Ye. It was so light that he didn't know what was inside. Fu Yunting's heart trembled. He didn't know if this was the king of hell's next move. He didn't know how many people had pledged their allegiance to Wang Ye, but among those who were familiar with him, who didn't say that he was Wang Ye's #1 right-hand man. Some even said that he was Wang Ye's pet molester. Motherfucker, he would rather work harder than a cow, or even be a free laborer, just to avoid meeting the king of hell. As for the so-called pet molester, he was sometimes even willing to put down his dignity, hoping that it was true. At least, according to the character of this pet molester who would not last for more than 7 days. After 7 days, he would not be bothered with him anymore, which would be the best. Unfortunately, ever since this master secretly arranged a good marriage for him, this pet molester talk disappeared like smoke. It could be imagined how deep the damage Li Honyuan caused to Fu Yunting. At first, Fu Yunting thought that this master treated everyone the same. Later, he found out that this was not the case. In private, he almost never showed any emotions. Even when he used bloody and cruel methods to deal with people, he was still as calm as an ancient well. No one could guess what he was thinking. Only when Fu Yunting met him alone, the gaze that fell on him was like a venomous snake staring at its prey, containing a violent storm that could tear him to pieces at any time. Fu Yunting thought several times that this person would take his life, but it didn't. Even if they sparred again and again in the martial arts arena, the bones in his body were broken one after another, and he fell into a coma no less than 3 times. In the end, he was still fine. He used the best wound medicine, and not the slightest bit of illness was left behind. If one was not careful, one might still be thinking about the previous couplet and miss it. However, he did not mention the most important rule. That was why this first young master was too annoying. Fortunately, Chen Jingmin matched the first half of the couplets as quickly as possible. He knew how to divide the work for the latter half. Therefore, this question was passed by a narrow margin. Chapter 116. Well, the third question was directed at the bridegroom. The others couldn't help even if they wanted to. Everyone was guessing what the bridegroom would show. This included the group of people who had helped him escort the bride. What was Luo Jingbo most famous for now? Naturally, it was his paintings. Could he paint on the spot? Thinking of this possibility, everyone couldn't help but be a little excited. Many people had only heard of the fine brushwork and had never seen it. But those who had seen it rarely didn't praise it. Luo Jingbo was not in a hurry. He seemed to be prepared. He stretched out a hand behind him, and something wrapped in red silk was placed in his hand. It looked like a relatively large book or something similar. Could it be a painting? Luo Jingbo opened the red silk bit by bit. Unexpectedly, there were books inside. What did he want to do? Luo Jingbo presented the book to Sun Yilin with both hands. Brother-in-law, please accept it. Then everyone understood. Was this the bridegroom's way of expressing himself? Damn, he actually bribed him directly? This was too treacherous. However, please note that your brother-in-law is not an ordinary person. He has seen all kinds of good things. You want to bribe him with just 2 books? Don't you think it's a bit too wishful thinking? Sun Yilin probably didn't expect to meet someone who didn't play by the rules. It was a talent competition. If you want to express yourself, you should just do it. But can you say that he was wrong? Absolutely not. Sun Yilin stared at the book in Luo Jingbu's hand and frowned. He seemed to be very conflicted. The people who were watching the fun at the gate of Duke Dinghua's mansion began to jeer. They asked Luo Jingbu not to do such a boring thing and quickly do something serious. Luo Jingbu didn't care. He just smiled and looked at Sun Yilin. Brother-in-law, do you accept it or not? Please tell me. Who was Sun Yilin? How could he marry off his little sister so easily just because of 2 books? He was determined. Yes. Anyway, his little sister was going to get married. Sun Yilin reached out to take the book. At this time, Luo Jingbu suddenly took back his book. Brother-in-law, you have to make way. Even Sun Yilin couldn't help but grit his teeth. He looked like a mellow and refreshing person, but there was actually a time when he was so slippery. She snatched the book away, and with a light flick of her wrist, she covered the book with the red silk again. She turned around and waved her hand behind her back. Open the door and make way. Her expression and tone were not very pleasant. This result was completely unexpected. The number 1 young master of the capital was so easily bought. Jingbua, what book did you give to Mr. Sun? Could it be that even young Master Sun couldn't refuse this unique book? Chen Jingmin narrowed his eyes slightly and pondered for a moment. Did Cousin Jingbua give me the Kun Fong Xiao? Luo Jingbua smiled, apparently agreeing with Chen Jingmin's guess. Only then did everyone remember that Sun Yilin was famous for being a love-struck fool. It shouldn't be an ordinary beauty chart, right? Our young Master Lin wouldn't be interested in an ordinary beauty chart, right? Of course, it wasn't an ordinary beauty chart. That was a beauty chart created by Jingwan. Few people who love flowers could refuse it, let alone young Master Lin, who had ulterior motives towards Jingwan. When Sun Yilin saw the small fine brushwork on the cover and the 3 words, Kun Fong Xiao, he had already determined who wrote this book. He had long heard that 2 extraordinary beauty charts had come out from Luo Shangshu's hands and had been shamelessly divided by the Grand Secretary and the Minister of Works. Whether it was extraordinary or Jingwan had made a move, it was impossible for Sun Yilin not to be moved. No matter how difficult it was for his brother-in-law, his younger sister had to go out. Why not accept the benefits? His younger sister would also understand. When the people waiting in Sun Yijia's small courtyard found out that the bridegroom had broken into the small courtyard, even Sun Yijia, who was worried that Luo Jingbo would be ruthlessly embarrassed, had the thought of how could it be so fast in her heart. According to Sun Yilin's ability, it didn't make sense for him to be defeated so quickly. Otherwise, why would there be only 2 obstacles? They had high expectations for Sun Yilin and were very confident in him. After listening to the servant girl's report, everyone was silent. 2 books were enough to send the bridegroom away. Was our young Master Lin too easy to send away? Or was his opponent too powerful? What kind of book was it? No one saw the cover, but some people guessed that it was a beauty chart. As soon as the servant girl's voice fell, laughter sounded in the room. It turns out that in young Master Lin's eyes, his younger sister isn't even worth 2 ordinary beauty charts. It seemed that they were criticizing Sun Yilin, but no one could tell that they were mocking Sun Yijia. Outsiders said that young Master Lin doted on his younger sister the most, but in reality, that was just the case. Sun Yijia, who was covered with a red veil, smiled. Fifth brother was probably angered by Jingbo. However, when she thought that the person who would become her husband was already outside the small courtyard, she couldn't help but feel nervous, and her palms were faintly sweating. The people blocking the small door were basically all women. In comparison, they were more difficult to deal with, because there were some people who said that they were joining in the fun, but in reality, they were deliberately looking for trouble. It just so happened that on this big day, you couldn't reprimand them. The bridegroom's bridegroom was too stingy with all kinds of difficulties and teases. The bridegroom was too stingy with all the red envelopes on him. Even the smile on Luo Jingbu's face disappeared, not to mention his brothers. Each and every one of them was infuriated. However, this was a group of women. They couldn't do anything to them. However, some people acted as if they didn't see their expressions and still had a smiling look on their faces. This block lasted for nearly an hour. It was almost the auspicious time to go out. Sun Yijia was extremely resentful. In the past, they would find trouble with her. She had endured it when she saw that the big day was around the corner. However, today, they wanted to make it impossible for her to go out. She would record this account and slowly settle it after today. However, these people didn't dare to really miss the auspicious time. It was one thing to make things difficult for them, but it was another thing to make things difficult for them. When Duchess Ding came to settle the account after autumn, it would be enough for them to suffer. Alas, forget it. It seems that our bridegroom is really... Many people also covered their mouths and laughed. However, we are willing to let them go. I just don't know if the bridegroom has moved our sister Jia. Listening to Luo Jingbua being made things difficult for her. Sunny Jia would have stood up several times if it weren't for the old maid gently pressing her haircut. She was a bride and needed to be reserved. She couldn't appear to be anxious. Otherwise, she didn't know how she would be made up. Today, she had to take every opportunity. Second brother, give me the guqin. Luo Jingming took down the guqin case from his back, opened it, and took out the guqin. He closed the case and placed the guqin on the table. He and another person held the guqin at both ends, temporarily acting as a temporary guqin table. Everyone knew what he was going to do. It wasn't that he had never played the guqin at this time before, but it was still relatively rare. However, everyone was curious about what song he would play. Luo Jingbua looked very calm at this time. The anger in his eyes had disappeared. He lowered his eyes slightly and looked at the guqin strings. He suddenly felt that his sister was actually very right. If he had been a little embarrassed before, his heart was exceptionally calm at this moment. His wife was bullied, so naturally, he had to make up for it. Thinking back to the few times he met Yijia, his sister might have exaggerated, but it was undeniable that Yijia was really a good girl. Moreover, he seemed to have unintentionally fallen in love with her. His fingers began to slide on the guqin strings, and decadent music poured out. Accompanied by the sound of the guqin, his lips opened and closed. There is a beauty. I can't forget her. I haven't seen her for a day. I miss her like crazy. The phoenix soars, seeking the phoenix from the four seas. Unfortunately, the beauty is not at the eastern wall. Replacing words with guqin, I write my heart. When will I see Su Shi? She comforts me. Willing words match her virtue. We will go hand in hand. Unable to fly together, she causes me to fall. The lingering sound of the guqin, the cadence, and the bold and explicit lyrics. This famous song was basically known by everyone present. It was called A Phoenix Seeking a Phoenix. But who was the one who wrote that poem? Wasn't it a little too? That's right. Jingwan knew that there was also a famous song called The Phoenix Seeking the Phoenix. The tune was roughly the same, but the only difference was that there were no lyrics. So, for Sun Yijia's sake, Jingwan once again went against her will and copied the lyrics of The Phoenix Seeking the Phoenix. At that moment, this person was all about being reserved. He paid attention to the artistic conception of hugging the pipa and covering half of his face. Not many people could write lyrics like this, let alone read it out in public. In the official circle, Luo Jingbua was definitely the first to do so. Perhaps after this, there would be people who would scold him for being improper and insulting to the refined culture. However, right now, everyone was stunned. Even those who knew that Luo Jingbua was going to play the guqin didn't know that there was an even bigger surprise. This person was also a person who amazes everyone with a single brilliant feat. In the room, Sun Yijia's face turned red, but her heart was filled with sweetness. It was obvious that Luo Jingbua's move helped Sun Yijia slap someone in the face, but it also helped her gain more hatred. As long as it was a woman, even if she didn't have vanity, when she was deeply loved by someone, she couldn't help but feel happy. They were born in the inner residence, grew up in the inner residence, and still lived in the inner residence after they got married. If they had an ordinary life, perhaps they would just pass it like that. However, when they were young, few people didn't yearn for love. At this time, someone had indeed obtained something that they might not be able to obtain in their lifetime. How could they not be jealous and hate? How could they not want to replace him? Many people might criticize him, but only these women would be deeply attracted to him. Sure enough, there were some women who looked at Luo Jingbua with infatuation in their eyes. The brothers standing behind Luo Jinghua looked at each other. All of them secretly thought that their brother, after today, would become the lover of most women in the boudoir. Not only that, the women in the brothel would probably line up to pour out their hearts to him. Those famous courtesans would probably be willing to throw themselves at him, hoping that he would become a guest. They only earnestly hoped that they could become the phoenix that he spoke of. Luo Jinghua's hands stopped moving. He raised his head and smiled faintly. His eyes were filled with endless gentleness. Even those young women who were already married couldn't help but blush, and their hearts beat faster. They were extremely uneasy, even though Luo Jinghua didn't look at them at all. The auspicious time has arrived, a loud voice interrupted all the charming and gentle atmosphere. Those who were blushing because of Luo Jinghua hurriedly looked away. However, they couldn't help but secretly size him up. They might be biting their lips or wringing their handkerchiefs tightly. Luo Jinghua entered the main hall in the courtyard. Sun Yijia's grandmother and 3 parents were sitting there. Obviously, they had heard Luo Jinghua's previous song. At this moment, they looked at Luo Jinghua with their own complicated feelings. Luo Jinghua was a little embarrassed at this moment. Fortunately, Sun Yijia was almost helped in walking in. Sun Yijia bid farewell and listened to their teachings. Luo Jinghua kowtowed and listened to their instructions. To Sun Yijia, it was nothing more than being filial to her in-laws and serving her husband. To Luo Jinghua, it was nothing more than being kind to Sun Yijia. Even so, Sun Yijia couldn't stop crying in the end. Luo Jinghua solemnly promised. At some point, Sun Yilin appeared again. He was going to carry Sun Yijia onto the bridal sedan chair. However, from the way he looked at Luo Jinghua, it could be seen that he had heard the entire song, a male phoenix seeking a female phoenix. When the bride got onto the sedan chair, the sound of gongs and drums filled the sky again. On the other hand, the Luo family was waiting anxiously. According to the estimated time, it was about time for the bride to return. If they missed the auspicious day of the wedding ceremony, it wouldn't be a good omen. However, at this moment, the Duke of Qin's carriage arrived at the Luo family. When Luo Peishan and the others heard this news, they couldn't help but want to pull their beards. However, it was useless to think so much now. It was more important to hurry and welcome them. Thus, the guests rushed to the main gate. They looked at the people coming in from outside the gate. Well, all the princes who had a place in the imperial court, except for Prince Kong and the princes who relied on him, came to the Luo family. Luo Peishan really wanted to say that the Luo family was too small to accommodate all these big Buddhists. However, on the surface, he had to smile and welcome them respectfully. That day at Aunt's residence, Lord Luo sincerely invited me. Naturally, I have to come. Li Honyuan said. Many people cursed in their hearts. Your Highness, you have the nerve to say this. Not to mention other things, even if the Emperor invited you, you might not even respond. You said so much to give Luo Peishan face. Who knows if he just came here to join in the fun because he didn't want to go to Duke Dinghua's mansion. However, when the people heard the list of gifts that Li Honyuan often gave, their expressions were wonderful. Not to mention that he directly gave tens of thousands of taels of gold as a gift. There was also a pile of good things. Moreover, just by hearing the name, they knew that some of the things were bestowed by the emperor. Was it really appropriate for him to give them out casually? Moreover, he was so generous. Did he really have no place to spend his money? Not to mention others. Li Hongming and the other brothers looked at Li Hongyuan strangely. When these brothers got married, he just gave some gifts as a token of appreciation. Now he was so generous. What did he want to do? However, before they could continue, there was a noise outside the gate. It turned out that the bride was back. On a day like today, even the noble princes had to retreat and make way for the bride. Sun Yijia got out of the sedan chair and was stuffed with a piece of red silk. The other end of the red silk was naturally in Luo Jinghua's hand. Fortunately, the auspicious time was just right. Luo Jinghua held Sun Yijia's hand and walked into the wedding hall. These nobles who were willing to stay to watch the ceremony naturally quickly added chairs for them. Today, there was no place for them to sit on the main seat. As for those who were unwilling to watch the ceremony, there were naturally servants to lead them to other places. Li Hongyuan stayed. Although this person was still considered gentle at this moment, his presence was still very strong. It made the lively and festive atmosphere drop a little. What was the meaning of watching his fiancée go through the wedding ceremony with another man? However, Li Hongyuan did not have any self-awareness at all. He supported himself with one hand on the armrest of the chair. 3 parts laziness, 3 parts leisure, 3 parts indifference, and there was also a hostility that prevented strangers from getting close. No matter how strong Li Hongyuan's presence was at this moment, he could only be ignored. In the loud and clear voice of the master of ceremonies, the wedding ceremony officially began. There were a lot of people inside and outside the wedding hall. They gradually moved their attention away from Li Hongyuan and gradually laughed. They watched the lively scene and cheered from time to time. Li Hongyuan's gaze landed on Jingwan. That's right. It was because she was here that he had to endure this noisy atmosphere. The ceremony is done. Send them to the bridal chamber. Then, the newlyweds were escorted in the direction of the bridal chamber. Jingwan followed, but Li Hongyuan was still sitting in the same place. It seemed that he had no intention of leaving. Luo Peishan came forward, but before he could get close, Li Hongyuan waved his hand and sent him away. Well, even if this person was a guest in someone else's residence, he did not have the slightest self-awareness. You still had to follow his instructions. Soon, in the wedding hall, there were only Li Hongyuan sitting and eunuch Mu, who had been pretending to be a wooden stake behind her all the time. The closest person to them was the maid standing outside the door. Where is Li Hongming? He went to the garden. The 4th young lady of the Luo family also went to the garden. Li Hongyuan sneered. He knew that Li Hongming would not let go of this opportunity. Chapter 117. No need for formalities. Li Hongming said gently. Thank you, Your Highness. Luo Jingying stood up straight and slightly raised her head. She quickly swept a glance over Li Hongming, as if she didn't dare to look at him again. Her sickly face quickly turned red. Li Hongming looked at Luo Jingying. Compared to the Luo 3rd Miss, the only thing that was better was her face. Unfortunately, that girl wasn't the same as the average person. If possible, he wanted to directly make a move on Jingwan. Unfortunately, that girl didn't look like someone who would be easily tempted. This was just a pastime. It was just a chess piece to prevent the Luo family from completely switching sides to another faction. After all, it was still unknown who the Luo 3rd Miss would end up in. Therefore, it was very important to keep this chess piece in his hands. Compared to last time, Miss seems to have lost a lot of weight. Are you feeling unwell? His voice was very gentle and carried a trace of tenderness. It wasn't very obvious, but it was enough for Luo Jingying to feel. Luo Jingying's face turned even redder. She only felt that Prince Rue was really gentle. He should have a good impression of her. Thank you, Your Highness, for your concern. This subject's daughter just caught a cold. It's just that I haven't fully recovered and my appetite isn't very good. That's why I'm like this. Right now, I'm feeling much better. I believe that I'll get better soon. That's good. This prince also. Li Hongming suddenly stopped talking. Li Hongyuan was puzzled and looked up at him. Li Hongming's hand stopped in midair. Luo Jingying felt that his movements were a bit stiff. Then, she saw him clench his hand into a fist and put it to his mouth, lightly coughing. At that moment, Luo Jingying's heart began to beat rapidly. Just now, did Prince Rue want to touch my face? That's right, that must be it. He really does like me. In Luo Jingying's opinion, Prince Rue was a modest gentleman. Under normal circumstances, how could he do something so impolite to a lady? The only explanation was that she couldn't control herself. Your Highness, this discovery seemed to have given Luo Jingying unlimited courage. She no longer lowered her head and just stared straight at Li Hongming. The adoration in her eyes was not restrained at all. Li Hongming looked back at her. The gentle smile on his face slowly faded, and he slowly put down his hand. Luo Jingying saw his change, and her heart began to panic. The blood on her face quickly faded. Your Highness, this subject's daughter. She didn't know how to explain. She was afraid that he would hate her. She didn't know what to do as tears quickly condensed in her eyes. Li Hongming reached out to take her hand and led her to the back of the rockery. Unless they walked in, they would never be able to see them. Li Hongming held her hand and didn't let go. His other hand gently wiped the corners of her eyes. "Don't cry. This prince's heart will ache." "Your Highness." She thought she had fallen into the abyss, but in the blink of an eye, she was lifted to the clouds. Her hand was being held. She gently tried to pull it back, but naturally, she didn't pull it back. "Your Highness, please let go of this subject's daughter." "Sorry, this prince was rude," but Li Hongming gently rubbed her hand. He picked it up and put her fingertips to his lips, gently touching them. This prince isn't willing to let go. No matter what, Luo Jingying was just a little girl with no experience in this field. How could she compare to Li Hongming, a veteran in this field? When he was gentle, it was enough to make people drown. Doesn't or not like this prince? Li Hongming pulled her into his arms. Luo Jingying subconsciously reached out to push against his chest. Li Hongming didn't use any force. Last time, when we hurriedly met on the street, this prince couldn't forget Ing-er. This prince originally thought that Ing-er also had feelings for this prince, but was it just this prince's unrequited love? If that's the case, Ing-er can push this prince away. That's not it. Luo Jingying quickly denied it. When she met Li Hongming's gaze, she suddenly took the initiative. She reached out to hug Li Hongming's waist and leaned her head on his chest. "This subject's daughter's heart is filled with thoughts of your Highness. I don't eat or drink. I can't sleep at night. How many times? I wish I could go find you." It turns out that Ing-er and this prince are the same. The girl you like also has this prince in her heart. That's great. Li Hongming held her waist with one hand and stroked her hair with the other. However, even though he said the most gentle words of love with a smile on his face, there was no emotion in his eyes. It was as if the person in his arms wasn't a person, but a toy for him to play with. It was only because this toy was still useful that he kept it for the time being. Luo Jingying's heart was as sweet as honey, but she still couldn't stop her tears. Li Hongming naturally felt it. He was a dignified prince. How would he look if his clothes got dirty when he was out as a guest? His eyes flashed coldly. He helped Luo Jingying up, held her chin, and wiped away her tears again. "Why are you crying? This subject's daughter is just too happy. If you're happy, then smile happily. This prince doesn't want to see your tears. Do you understand?" As he spoke, he naturally bent down and kissed away the tears on the other side of her face. At that moment, Luo Jingying only felt her mind go blank. She couldn't feel anything other than the touch on her face. Li Hongming kissed her gently, following the bridge of her nose and finally landing on her lips. Li Hongming felt her body trembling slightly due to nervousness and shyness. She even subconsciously closed her eyes. However, she didn't push him away. She didn't even struggle. The coldness in his eyes deepened. She was indeed a slut. Luo Jingying was kissed by Li Hongming, and her waist was also caressed and kneaded by him. This was the first time she had experienced something like this, so she was naturally very sensitive. Her body quickly went limp, and the hand holding Li Hongming's waist felt weak. Li Hongming let go of her. Her eyes were blurred, and she was dizzy. She probably didn't know anything at this moment. While he mocked her in his heart, he couldn't help but feel complacent. Perhaps in his opinion, no woman could escape from the palm of his hand. Li Hongming gently scratched the tip of her nose. "Silly girl." Luo Jingying gradually came back to her senses. When she heard his words, her face flushed red again. However, she didn't lower her head to avoid him. Instead, she looked at him with adoration. "Your Highness." Her voice was slightly hoarse. Li Hongming didn't spend too much energy on women, but that didn't mean he didn't like women. Luo Jingying wasn't good in other aspects, but her face was still very attractive. Li Hongming smiled. Since she delivered herself to his doorstep, it would be a waste not to eat it. "Do you like it? Your Highness? Tell me, do you like it?" Li Hongming asked again. Luo Jingying could see Li Hongming's persistence. Perhaps all men were like this. "Yes, I like it." It was almost inaudible. "Do you still want it?" Li Hongyuan asked with interest. Because Luo Jingying was shy, her gaze became somewhat evasive. Li Hongming pinched her chin slightly. "Tell me, do you want it?" "Yes." Li Hongming didn't hesitate to crush her. Compared to before, he used a lot more strength and rudeness. Luo Jingying was trapped and couldn't extricate herself. Luo Jingying didn't wake up until she heard laughter from not far away. She subconsciously wanted to break free. Li Hongming was currently in high spirits, so how could he allow that? He just led Luo Jingying to the bottom of the rockery and whispered in her ear, "Don't worry, they can't see. Jinger, just don't make a sound." He even maliciously pinched her body. Luo Jingying hurriedly covered her mouth and glared at Li Hongming with misty eyes. To Li Hongming, this was a temptation. He didn't hesitate to continue. Luo Jingying was very scared. She knew very well that if she was discovered, she wouldn't be able to get away with it. However, she couldn't help but feel a little excited. She even felt that it would be better if she was discovered. Then, she could legitimately become Prince Rui's woman. The voice gradually faded away. It should be a servant girl passing by the garden. Luo Jingying was half taken off by Li Hongming. Her outer clothes were hanging on her arm, leaving only her undergarment. On the other hand, Li Hongming's clothes were not messy at all. Fortunately, he still had some scruples and wouldn't go too far in the Luo family. Therefore, he didn't completely make Luo Jingying his woman. However, even so, Luo Jingying had tasted the sweetness of it. It wouldn't take long to scold Luo Jingying and wipe her clean. However, Li Hongming's mood wasn't very good. He was only satisfied with his mouth, but his body was burning. However, even if there were guards keeping watch, he didn't dare to let go. An accident could happen at any time. If he was discovered, it wouldn't be good for him at all. Therefore, Luo Jingying's appearance was almost done. He hugged her soft body and helped her put on her clothes. The traces on her body were completely covered. Other than her slightly messy hair and a little sweat, nothing else could be seen. However, in Luo Jingying's state, if anyone saw her for a short period of time, anyone with a discerning eye would be able to tell what had happened at a glance. Li Hongming let her lean on his body. However, during this process, he didn't feel very good. However, Li Hongming's self-control was amazing. When it was necessary, he was like this even for his own desires. When Luo Jingying was almost completely recovered, he took out a white mutton fat jade, pinned in half the size of a palm, and put it in Luo Jingying's hand. "This is what this prince always carries with me. The original knot was broken, and I didn't have time to match it with another one. Now, this prince will give it to Immerse." Luo Jingying held this expensive jade pendant. Was this the token of love given to her by the prince? Her heart, which was originally a little uneasy, completely calmed down. "Immerse will match it with the most beautiful knot and hide it close to my body." Okay. This thing was indeed for Luo Jingying's heart and was indeed a treasure. However, it wasn't something that Li Hongming often carried. From its appearance, it didn't have any special features. Even if this thing was brought to his door, if something unexpected happened, Li Hongming could completely deny it, and no one would be able to catch him. "Immerse, will you be able to go out in a few days? This prince will take you to the imperial plantation to play." Okay. Luo Jingying thought about her current situation. If she wanted to go out, she would need her grandmother's permission. Naturally, she had to be obedient. In her grandmother's eyes, the most obedient thing she could do was to not provoke that slut Luo Jingwan. Well, in order to be able to go out, she decided that she wouldn't appear in front of that slut for a period of time. It just so happened that this time, her mother was also very angry. Since she came out of the small Buddha hall until now, her mother hadn't said a word to her. It would be a lie if she said that she wasn't upset, besides paying her respects. So what if she didn't take half a step out of the third branch's courtyard? It would be good to coax her mother. "Your Highness, or can't be sure about this. Because my body hasn't fully recovered, my mother and the others don't allow me to go out, so it doesn't matter. When Immerse can go out, just send someone to inform this prince. After all, Immerse's health is the most important thing." These words of coaxing came out of his mouth. At this moment, Luo Jingying felt that she was the happiest woman in the world. Her choice was indeed correct. When she entered Prince Rui's residence, when she gave birth to this man's eldest son, the entire Luo family, including those two old farts, would be at her mercy. She wanted to see how arrogant Luo Jingwan would be at that time. Luo Jingying smiled unusually happily. By the way, why didn't Ing go to the bridal chamber to join in the fun? Luo Jingying's face turned pale. She pulled up the corners of her mouth and smiled reluctantly. Third sister doesn't like me. Third brother is her biological brother. He certainly doesn't welcome me. I don't want to be disliked by them. Mrs. Lu had told her that even if she hated someone, she shouldn't make up bad things about that person in front of others. Instead, she should let others feel that she was good. Only when she was the best, others would naturally think that the person who didn't get along with her was the one who was at fault. Compared with simple slander, the effect would be countless times better. Our Ing is such a good girl. How could anyone not like her? I think there must be some misunderstanding between you two sisters. It will be fine if there is a chance to solve it. Don't be sad. Li Hongming wasn't very clear about the conflict between Luo Jingying and Jingwan, but he knew a little about it. He didn't know the specific reason, and there was no need for him to know such a trivial matter. Yes, Inger will. Then, Inger will go back to her courtyard to freshen up, and then go to the bridal chamber to take a look. Inger will listen to Wang Ye. Luo Jingying reluctantly left. She really looked back 3 times with every step. Li Hongming had been watching her tenderly. When Luo Jingying completely disappeared, the expression on his face completely disappeared. However, the desire in his body hadn't completely subsided. He didn't leave for the time being. Without Luo Jingying by his side, he could stand here for as long as he wanted. It didn't matter who saw him. When Luo Jingying's maid, who was left outside, saw Luo Jingying finally appear, her anxious heart finally calmed down. She came to serve her after coming out of the small Buddha hall. She was originally a second-rank maid by Mrs. Lu's side. She naturally knew Luo Jingying's temper very well. She didn't know when she would make trouble again. How could she not be worried when she went to the garden alone for more than a quarter of an hour? If something happened, they would be the unlucky ones. Although she didn't know what Luo Jingying did, she knew very well that the girl went to the garden when she heard that Prince Rui was in it. Before that, she had been a little absent-minded and restless. She was not completely ignorant of the affairs of the world. Originally, Mrs. Lu was going to be a tongfang for Luo Romping. However, with the appearance of concubine Huan, this matter was dismissed. She didn't experience the matters between men and women, but she knew. When she saw Luo Jingying's appearance, her heart thumped. She carefully looked at the way Luo Jingying walked. Nothing irreversible had happened. Let's go back. Yes. The maid was simply looking forward to it. She didn't know whether Luo Jingying was guilty or not. Along the way, she tried to avoid people as much as possible. Her lower body was sticky and uncomfortable, so she directly asked someone to prepare water for her bath. At this time, who will want to take a bath for no reason? Luo Jingying's etiquette instructor was also old and shrewd. When she thought of Luo Jingying's appearance, she had some guesses in her heart. Without saying anything, she directly called the maid over. The maid knew that the etiquette instructor was very powerful, so she didn't dare to hide anything and told her everything. After listening, the etiquette instructor narrowed her eyes and didn't say anything. In fact, she was the 4th person in the 3 branches who knew about Luo Romping's plan. Mrs. Lu trusted her very much, so she didn't hide anything from her. This etiquette instructor was actually one of Mrs. Lu's people. She was also wholeheartedly thinking about the glory of the Lu family. If it could be exchanged for the Lu family's revival, she would not hesitate to do it. After the water was carried into Luo Jingying's room, the etiquette instructor went in and sent all the maids out. At this time, Luo Jingying didn't notice the marks on her body. What's the matter, instructor? This servant will help miss to take a bath. Although Luo Jingying felt strange, she didn't refuse. When she took off Luo Jingying's clothes and saw the marks on her body, she thought of Luo Jingying's attitude. There was intimacy, but she didn't lose her virginity. She put her hand on Luo Jingying's shoulder. She didn't rub it, but gently touched it. This man, when Luo Jingying first heard this, she was startled. But after listening to the etiquette instructor's unhurried explanation, she said, "Miss, you might as well close your eyes and pretend that the hand on your body is Prince Rui's." Luo Jingying obediently did as she was told. Her ears were filled with all kinds of shameful descriptions, and her mind was filled with all kinds of fantasies. With the two hands on her body, Luo Jingying gradually couldn't bear it. "Miss, you don't need to bite your lips. You can make a sound." The etiquette instructor explained to her in detail how to make the most pleasant sound. To put it bluntly, this etiquette instructor was nothing more than teaching Luo Jingying how to serve men. Chapter 118. Regardless of what was going on at Luo Jingying's side, the bridal chamber was bustling with noise and excitement. Sun Yijia's veil had been removed, and she was being teased by a group of people. However, because Madame Luo was there, even if they saw the injuries on Sun Yijia's face, they would only mutter a few words in their hearts. They did not dare to say anything. After all, they did not have the confidence of the people from Duke Ding's mansion and the Sun family. If their mouths were cheap and offended Madame Luo, it would definitely not be a wise thing to do. As a newly married woman, she only needed to lower her head and express her shyness. She did not need to pay attention to what others said. If she just ignored their words, it would not be difficult to endure. Luo Jingbua had been dragged out, and the people who were making trouble for Sun Yijia gradually lost interest. When the crowd dispersed, Sun Yijia still let out a slight sigh of relief. She touched her face with her hand. She was still a little sad. When she was in Duke Ding's mansion, no matter how unpleasant other people's words were, she would not frown. However, she cared about other people's words because of her. Luo Jingbua was the man she liked, the man who had already become her husband. The people around Sun Yijia also knew that she was heartbroken. When they saw her actions, they did not say anything. They were afraid that the more they said, the more upset she would feel. Today was a big day. They could not do anything that they should not do. Sister-in-law. A soft call pulled Sun Yijia back to reality. Sun Yijia looked at Jingwan, who had a warm smile on her face. She could not help but smile. Little Sister Wan. After becoming Jingwan's sister-in-law, this form of address seemed to be more intimate. Early on, when Sun Yijia and Luo Jingbua confirmed their marriage, Jingwan had already teased her more than once. Naturally, she would not say those things again. In addition, Sun Yijia's skin had become thicker. Jingwan moved a small stool and sat next to Sun Yijia. She looked at Sun Yijia and suddenly sighed. "What's wrong?" Sun Yijia was a little confused by her. Jingwan shook her head. "I just feel that fate is a wonderful thing." Sun Yijia couldn't agree more. She always felt that her life of more than 10 years was not as exciting as the days after she met Jingwan. It was full of ups and downs, but the final ending was so unexpected. At the same time, it was also a wonderful thing that she didn't even dare to imagine. It turns out that Sister Wan is my benefactor. She always felt that if it weren't for Jingwan, she wouldn't be where she was today. "You must be." Jingwan agreed shamelessly. "Third young lady, please have some tea." A soft and sweet voice suddenly sounded from the side. Jingwan tilted her head. She was a very beautiful maid. Her eyes, in particular, were filled with innate affection, as if they could seduce people. She had never seen her before. She wasn't the person who came with the dowry yesterday. She was one of the 4 head maidservants who left with the bridal sedan today. She glanced again. Sure enough, there was another unfamiliar face. In that instant, Jingwan understood why 2 of Sun Yijia's 4 head maidservants were replaced. Duchess Ding had really put in a lot of effort to prepare 2 beautiful bedwarmers for her elder brother. Instead of letting other vixens seduce them, it was better to prepare them herself. With the indenture contracts in hand, they wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. Sometimes, Jingwan felt that this kind of thinking was really strange. In her opinion, there was no need to persuade a fickle man to stay. Giving the people around her to him was more disgusting than him finding other women outside. "Put it down. I'm not thirsty," Jingwan said indifferently. Then, "Third young lady, do you want some snacks?" "No need. You can leave." If there's anything I need, I'll tell you myself. After all, she was Sun Yijia's head maidservant in name. If she flared up at this moment, it would only make Sun Yijia lose face. Jingwan knew very well what this person was thinking. It was nothing more than thinking that she would become her sister-in-law. There would only be benefits and no harm if she curried favor with her at this moment. However, wasn't this person too stupid? She didn't understand anything about the situation, but she rushed to curry favor? However, when Duchess Ding selected people, she probably chose them according to the standards of a vase. She didn't need them to have any tricks up their sleeves. Go outside and wait. I'll call you if I need you, Sun Yijia said faintly. When only Sun Yijia and Jingwan were left in the room, Sun Yijia smiled faintly and said, I didn't discipline them well. I'll let Sister Wan see a joke. Jingwan didn't say anything, but she already had a plan in her heart. After that, Jingwan accompanied Sun Yijia and chatted about everything. There was a banquet outside, and a small table was sent in from the bridal chamber. Jingwan didn't say anything. She directly pulled Sun Yijia up, and the two of them ate together. Sun Yijia wanted to refuse. Even Sun Yijia's wet nurse, nanny, and maidservant felt that it was against the rules. A newly married woman had to be aware that she would be hungry for a day. Moreover, from the moment she sat on the bed until the groom came back and drank the wedding wine, she couldn't get out of bed during this period. However, Nanny Gong didn't seem to be surprised. After Jingwan sat down, she put food in Jingwan's bowl. Jingwan usually ate by herself in her own courtyard. Now her behavior was just to show her attitude. Sister-in-law, you haven't eaten breakfast yet. Aren't you hungry yet? It's still early for my third brother to come back. Hurry up and eat. She moved closer. Rules are dead, but people are flexible. My third brother asked me to prepare this. He doesn't even mind. Besides, we're all family. If outsiders don't know, who will say anything? Jingwan's words made everyone who wanted to say something shut their mouths. Sun Yijia was very pleased with Luo Jingbu's thoughtfulness and Jingwan's understanding. Speaking of this banquet, it was a true banquet that lasted for several hours. If someone deliberately forced the groom to drink, almost everyone would collapse. Jingwan felt that it was very unlikely that her third brother wouldn't collapse today. Sure enough, Luo Jingbo collapsed in the middle of the banquet. However, Luo Jingbo still had some consciousness. He didn't ask the servants to help him back to the bridal chamber. Instead, he went next door. It had to be said that this action made Sun Yijia feel a little sad. Jingwan understood her brother's intention. Third brother probably doesn't want sister-in-law to tire herself out today. Moreover, if he vomits, it will make the bridal chamber look bad. It's still early. Let him wait for a while to sober up. After comforting Sun Yijia, Jingwan felt that it was not suitable for her to stay any longer since her third brother had come back. Jingwan had just left when the servant girl, who served Jingwan tea and snacks, was now standing in front of the door of Luo Jingbu's room with a bowl of hangover soup. However, she was blocked by Luo Jingbu's servant girl. One questioned and wanted to enter, while the other firmly refused to let her in. Sun Yijia's wet nurse was so angry that her face turned ashen. The first night hadn't even passed yet, and she was already thinking of causing trouble. Just because Duchess Ding's wife said to take good care of young miss and young master, she used a chicken feather as a command arrow. However, it was not good to do anything today. Logically speaking, Jingwan shouldn't interfere. Unfortunately, she didn't care about sand in her eyes. In the past, it was not good for her to interfere in such trivial matters. But now, she even wanted to interfere in her brother's courtyard. She directly walked forward and said, "Give it to me." Luo Jingbu's servant girl hurriedly bowed and pushed the door open. Then, she stepped aside. However, the servant girl was still hesitating. "Third young miss, this is a small matter. Give it to me." Jingwan's face turned cold, and her voice became stern. The servant girl was shocked and quickly let go. Jingwan went in and saw Luo Jingbo lying on the bed lifelessly. She could smell the unpleasant smell of alcohol from afar. She could imagine how much he had been forced to drink. Jingwan approached him. Third brother, wake up." Luo Jingbo heard a woman's voice in a daze. His first reaction was to think of his younger sister's teaching. Get lost, he subconsciously blurted out and kicked at her. Jingwan didn't get too close, so she didn't get kicked. She smiled. Her third brother wasn't like this before, which meant that her teaching was very successful. Third brother, it's me. Wake up. Jingwan persistently woke Luo Jingbo up. Luo Jingbo raised his head and stared at her for a moment before he saw who it was. Little sister. Yes, it's me. She went forward and helped him up. Drink the hangover soup. Luo Jingbo took Jingwan's hand and gulped down the glass of wine. Little sister, your sister-in-law. Don't worry. I've told her. Thank you for your hard work. It's nothing. Hurry and sleep. And Luo Jingbo fell back. Jingwan went out and handed the empty bowl to the servant girl. Guard the door. No one is allowed to enter. Then she said to the people of Sanijia, if it's late and third brother hasn't come out, I'll have to trouble Mama to wake him up and send him back to the bridal chamber to sleep. Third young lady is too polite. Serving young master and young mistress is this servant's duty. Jingwan's action was to express her position and attitude. There was nothing for her to do here. Jingwan didn't intend to join in the fun and directly returned to the Haidang elegant residence. However, just as she entered the courtyard, she found that something was wrong. Her wet nurse was anxiously waiting at the door. Wet nurse, what's wrong? Jingwan asked, puzzled. Young lady, Jin Xinwang has been here for a while. It seems that he doesn't intend to leave for a while. He also didn't let this servant and the others go find you. Jingwan lightly frowned. How could this great Buddha come to her place? I'll go take a look. Li Hongyuan stood in front of that Wei Zi. His eyes were malicious, as if he was looking at a great enemy. He wanted to tear that peony into thousands of pieces before he would stop. Jingwan's feet paused for a moment before she walked forward. Greetings to Wang Ye. Li Hongyuan turned his head to look at her. Her upright posture, slightly bowed head, that smooth and white neck was so clearly reflected in his eyes. That scar was especially irksome. However, when he thought of the initial trace of that scar, Li Hongyuan's eyes couldn't help but darken and his throat moved. Dispense with the formalities. Jingwan stood up straight. Don't know why Wang Ye has come to visit? Her voice was a bit cold. There were so many guests in the residence today. If she was seen by others, she probably wouldn't be able to wash herself clean even if she jumped into that river. Being disdained by Wan once again, Li Hongyuan really wanted to properly teach her a lesson. I don't see a single Haidang in your courtyard. Why is it called Haidang Elegant Residence? Chapter 119. Li Hongyuan did not answer the question. Even if Jingwan was displeased, she felt even more helpless. Aside from his noble status, his temper was also difficult to deal with. Replying to Wang Ye, when I was in Qianfu, China's courtyard was planted with many begonias and was named Begonia Elegant Residence. This courtyard is just borrowing that name. You like begonias? Li Hongyuan continued to ask. He naturally knew the origin of the courtyard's name. It was a pity that there was no painting master among his shadow guards and could not paint the beautiful scene of the blooming begonias. There was also the innocent and cute appearance of the little Wan standing under the tree, smiling and reaching out to catch the petals. I like it very much. In Ben Wang's opinion, as long as it's a flower, Miss Luo should like it. Clearly feeling that Li Hongyuan's mood had calmed down, Jingwan's heart was somewhat surprised. She did not show it on her face and smiled. Wang Ye is not wrong to say so. What kind of flower do you want? You can tell Ben Wang. Ben Wang will send someone to find it for you. Jingwan's first reaction was that Jin Xinwang was suffering from lovesickness again. Otherwise, why would he do such a thing for no reason? Thanking Wang Ye for his kindness. As the saying goes, one should not receive a reward without merit. Furthermore, there is a difference between men and women. You always speak so directly. Don't you know that it's easy to offend people? What's more, it's Ben Wang. You have to know, in the entire capital, no one can refuse Ben Wang. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan expressionlessly. There was no way to know his mood. Wang Ye, don't you know that your words are very ambiguous? Moreover, according to your temper, if someone really provoked you, shouldn't you directly flare up? Would you say these things to a little girl like her? After interacting with Jin Wang a few times, Jingwan always felt that he seemed to be much better than the rumors. What happened to being malicious, ruthless, and temperamental? Perhaps it was because he gave Jingwan a different feeling that Jingwan was the same in front of him as she was in front of other people. Li Honyuan suddenly smiled. Jingwan couldn't help but glance at the peony beside him. If this flower was replaced by an ink peony, it would really be indescribable. It was mysterious, noble, elegant, beautiful, and charming. This wasn't the first time he felt this way, but perhaps because he was standing next to Peony, this feeling was especially obvious. Li Honyuan naturally noticed the change in Jingwan's expression. "What's wrong? Your Highness just said that this subject's daughter is too straightforward and unlikable. So, I don't want to talk about it now." Now you're taking this prince seriously. Speak, this prince won't get angry. Jingwan was a little conflicted. Generally speaking, men didn't like being compared to flowers. This time, Li Honyuan was even more curious about what Jingwan was thinking. "Hurry up and say it. If you can't say anything, this prince will have to stay in your courtyard for a while longer." With such a threat, Jingwan couldn't help but grind her teeth. "Actually, it's nothing. This subject's daughter just feels that when your Highness smiles, it's like an ink peony blooming." Li Honyuan raised his eyebrows with interest. This saying was really unique. "What do you mean?" Jingwan lightly spat out a few words, neither fast nor slow. Li Honyuan gave a low chuckle. For a person who was crazy about flowers, to be compared to the king of flowers should be a very honorable thing, right? Li Honyuan was greatly pleased by Jingwan. Naturally, his heart was also fiercely tickled by Jingwan. It was itchy, uncomfortable, and numb. However, Jingwan's words greatly shocked the person serving her. Was this something a woman in the boudoir should say to a man? Mama Gong didn't show it on her face, but she couldn't help but sigh in her heart. "Good girl, are you dissatisfied that this hungry wolf that is eyeing you covetously isn't restless enough? The tiger's den and the wolf's den are incomparably dangerous. Don't jump into it yourself." Li Honyuan took a few steps closer to Jingwan and reached out his hand. Jingwan subconsciously took a step back. Li Honyuan's hand moved again and placed it on top of her head, gently stroking it. "Your words are a bit more straightforward, your personality is a bit more stubborn, and your bones are a bit more arrogant. However, it doesn't matter. You don't need to change anything for anyone. This is very good. This prince will always protect you. In the future, don't say similar things to other men, no matter what kind of flower they are." Li Honyuan withdrew his hand and stared at her for a moment. Then he brushed past Jingwan and left. Jingwan turned around and looked at that upright figure. This man? Why did he come to her place? Jingwan clearly felt the gentleness in his eyes and the doting and protective care under his actions. It was strange and inexplicable. Did he really think of her as that cinnabar in his heart, that white moonlight? But this attitude wasn't right. If he really thought of her as a substitute for someone, then according to his obsession and inability to obtain that person, when he met someone similar, he should directly take it by force. He had that power and that ability. Although this might make her hate him, but from his point of view, this was reasonable and reasonable. Jingwan always felt that something was out of control, and it was related to her. Perhaps it was related to Jin Wang, but she didn't know the slightest bit and was completely deceived. This feeling wasn't good. However, the other party was a prince at Qin Wang. Even if he had no power or influence, there wasn't a single courtier that could shake him. Not to mention her, a small girl from the inner compound. The disparity was too big. She could only passively move forward with her eyes covered, unable to resist or struggle. Jingwan couldn't help but frown. Gong Mama looked at Jingwan and knew that she was already suspicious, but because she didn't know the source, she was afraid that she couldn't understand. She sighed again in her heart. The girl was extremely intelligent, and her ability was not weak. However, she was a girl and lived in the inner compound. She had no power or influence and needed to rely on the family to survive. Against such a sinful person, because she was in the light and he was in the dark, naturally she had no chance of winning. At this time, The wet nurse would take care of beating the maidservants. Gong Mama walked to Jingwan's side and gently stroked her back. Girl, don't think so much. These days, how should be, you have to take one step at a time. Jingwan looked at Gong Mama. Gong Mama's words seemed to have a deeper meaning, or was it purely to appease her? Mama, I'm fine. It was said that Jingwan was an open-minded person. If she really couldn't figure out something, she wouldn't keep holding on to it. Not long after, she put the matter aside. When the car reaches the mountain, there will be a way. Even if it was a dead end, it was also her fate. At that time, she would always make the most beneficial choice. However, this matter still planted a seed in her heart. As for the bridal chamber, whether Luo Jingbua, a virgin, would make a fool of himself on his first night was their own business. At night, Jingwan didn't forget to sleep so soundly. She always had a hazy dream. She seemed to be very intimate with someone, but it didn't seem like that. When she woke up in the morning, she completely forgot about it. However, it was strange that Yuan Xiao didn't come to see her last night. As far as she knew, Yuan Xiao didn't go back to the Yuan family last night. She didn't know that Yuan Xiao had already escaped from the gates of hell because she slept in her bed and took advantage of her. Even if Yuan Xiao came again, Nanny Gong would think of a way to stop her. Today, the bridal chamber's tea ceremony was the highlight. However, the Luo family was a big family. Naturally, the bride didn't need to get up early in the morning to make breakfast. Sun Yijia's work and rest had always been quite regular. Even if she was married and became a wife for the first time, it didn't change anything. Moreover, her newlywed husband was considerate of her last night and didn't go overboard. She had a good rest afterwards. Now that she woke up, there was basically no discomfort. Although she was a little startled when she woke up because there was suddenly another person beside her, she soon felt an unprecedented stability and indescribable sweetness. Sun Yijia looked at Luo Jingbua for a moment, who hadn't woken up yet, and was about to get up quietly. However, as soon as she moved, Luo Jingbua also woke up. Jingbua, did I wake you up? Luo Jingbua paused and realized the situation. At first, he was a little embarrassed. However, should it be said that men were born to be self-taught in this aspect? In just a short moment, he naturally reached out his hands, hugged Sun Yijia, and kissed her. His hands were also not very well behaved. He was not as innocent as he was when Sun Yijia touched him in Great Elder Princess's mansion. After all, this woman was thin-skinned. She couldn't help exclaiming when she saw Luo Jingbua's sudden action. Young master and young madam, are you awake? The nanny's voice came from outside. Sun Yijia grabbed his hands in a flurry and blushed. Jingbua, we still have to serve tea. Luo Jingbua hugged her for a while. Get up. He held Sun Yijia's hands that reached out to dress him. I'll do it myself. Ask the maid to come in and help you dress. As he spoke, he flipped over and got off the bed. He saw Sun Yijia sitting on the bed and looking at him without moving. For some reason, he seemed to suddenly have an epiphany. He leaned over and held Sun Yijia's face, kissing her lips again. Let's forget about today. In the future, there will be plenty of time for you to help your husband undress. Sun Yijia blushed again. Luo Jingbua stood up and picked up the clothes that had been prepared for him. Come in. The servants came in one after another with water and towels. They were divided into two groups. One group served Sun Yijia, and the other naturally tidied up Luo Jingbua's clothes. Seeing the servant girl's actions, not to mention Sun Yijia, even the person serving her had an ugly expression on her face. Luo Jingbua took a step back. I'll do it myself. I'll just serve your young madam. Young master, how can you do this kind of thing yourself? She smiled coquettishly and rolled her eyes. Even if Luo Jingbua didn't know that the Yu family prepared a private room for the son-in-law, he still remembered his younger sister's teachings. Moreover, this man was enlightened. Did he still need others to give him advice? He pulled a long face and slapped the maid's hand away. Get out. In the future, you will serve outside. You are not allowed to enter the room. That maid immediately felt wronged. Her eyes were quickly filled with tears. She looked at Luo Jingbua as if she wanted to say something. This is the first morning of this young master's wedding. Are you going to cry at a funeral? That maid hurriedly wiped away the tears that were about to fall. She turned around and ran away. Luo Jingbo put on his clothes, combed his hair, and washed his face. The whole process was very fast and didn't take much time. The two maids who were originally serving him were only there to help him. He looked at Sun Yijia again. She kept looking at him and smiling. Luo Jingbo was puzzled by her smile. "What are you smiling at?" "Yijia, change that maid just now. She's so annoying." His little sister had said that regardless of whether he liked her or not, he had to be honest. However, his little sister seemed to have also said that everything should be discussed and that he shouldn't be too overbearing. "If you like her, then keep her. Just don't let her appear in front of me." Sun Yijia smiled and nodded. "I'll listen to you." Not many women would like a maid who was specially used as a concubine for their husbands. Luo Jingwa's attitude made people very happy. Sun Yijia's wet nurse and the others were also very happy. There was nothing better than the fact that the son-in-law respected their young miss and didn't succumb to the temptations of those little vixens. Moreover, since the son-in-law had already said that he wanted to deal with this person, that chicken feather arrow was useless. Naturally, he wouldn't show any mercy when dealing with this person. However, now wasn't the time. They had to wait until after the tea ceremony. Because Sun Yijia had two mothers-in-law, the place where the tea ceremony was held was naturally in the main courtyard. Jingwan first went to the Falling Plum house to see her parents. Then, she went to the main courtyard with the other people of the second branch. However, it seemed that her grandfather wasn't resting today, but this person was at home. Could it be that Lu Qingdi specially allowed him to take a day off? Was Lu Qingdi too kind, or was it because of Sun Yijia's special status? The only former daughter-in-law who was still married? Well, no matter what the reason was, it was a good thing for Sun Yijia. When all the masters of the Luo family's backyard had arrived, Luo Jingbo and Sun Yijia appeared on time. Sun Yijia was wearing a red dress. Her hair was changed from the original girl's bun to a woman's bun. Her hair accessories and jewelry weren't very expensive. She didn't wear any of the 12 sets of expensive head ornaments. Excluding the scar on her face, she looked quite good. She was in high spirits, her face was rosy, and there was a bit of shyness in the corners of her eyes. Luo Jingbo also seemed to have shed his youth overnight and become a real man. Jingwan muttered in her heart. It seemed that she didn't make a fool of herself last night. Her third brother also knew his limits. Behind them, there were Sun Yijia's wet nurse, the nanny in charge, and 8 servant girls. Sun Yijia's original 4 head servant girls, 2 head servant girls, and Luo Jingwa's 2 head servant girls. Everyone's hands were full. There were cushions on the ground. Sun Yijia first offered tea to Luo Shangshu and old Madame Luo. She was his granddaughter-in-law. Luo Peishan naturally wouldn't say anything. He took the tea, took a sip, and directly gave her a red packet. Then, Sun Yijia naturally handed over the things that she prepared in advance. However, old Madame Luo was very happy. Because of Jingwan, she liked Sun Yijia very much. Sun Yijia couldn't find any fault with herself. It's Jingwa's blessing that you can marry him. If he dares to bully you in the future, just tell grandmother directly. Grandmother will help you deal with him. Sun Yijia was a little confused. This wasn't right. Shouldn't she remind her to get along well with her sisters-in-law, take care of her younger brothers and sisters, and help the Luo family produce more offspring? Her sisters-in-law had all done this. Old Madame Luo handed her a makeup box with a smile. Sun Yijia came back to her senses and hurriedly said a few words before handing over the gift. Then, it was Sun Yijia's father-in-law and mother-in-law. Once again, she refreshed her understanding of them. Madame Zhang didn't say anything and just kept saying, "Good, good, good." Sun Yijia suddenly felt that she might have married not only a good husband, but also a good family. These 4 people didn't say anything, so the rest of the elders naturally didn't say anything either. Sun Yijia just served tea, received the red packet, and handed over the filial gifts. After repeating these actions a few times, it was done. It was unbelievably smooth, and she wasn't put in a difficult position at all. Sun Yijia knew that this wasn't because she was born into a noble family, and the Luo family was all praising her. She wasn't that noble. The Luo family definitely wouldn't do this because of her status. They really accepted her and treated her well. Then it was the people of the same generation. Little Wang Shi's expression was still not very good, but she insisted on coming out. Although little Wang Shi was born into a noble family, she wasn't a direct descendant. Her father wasn't a high-ranking official and had a generous salary. Naturally, her status was much lower than Sun Yijia's, not to mention her dowry. As the eldest sister-in-law, she was fiercely suppressed. It was definitely impossible for her to not have any feelings. However, it was also impossible for her to be so jealous of Sun Yijia. Therefore, some people didn't think that there would be a secret confrontation between the two sisters-in-law. First, it was the brothers. Then it was the sisters. They came one after another. Of course, she could only give away the items that were smaller than Luo Jingwa's. She didn't take them back. However, to Sun Yijia, these were really nothing. For those who had already entered school, Sun Yijia prepared the 4 treasures of the study and a paperweight. As for the smaller ones, there were some other things. However, they were all worth something. Therefore, everything she gave away was actually good stuff. Naturally, the things she prepared for the girls were also good stuff, but they weren't too excessive. It wouldn't make people think that she was stingy, nor would it make people think that she was a wastrel. Actually, when Jingwan received the box from Sun Yijia, she already sensed that Sun Yijia's things were different from other people's. Not to mention other things, just the weight of the box alone was not light. The things that her sister-in-law gave her were probably very valuable. Sun Yijia gave her a tacit smile. In fact, Luo Jingying was the most sensitive to Jingwan's matters. Moreover, she was right next to Jingwan. She really wanted to open Jingwan's box and see what was inside. However, in order to be able to go out, she couldn't do anything. If she did, she would be seen as looking for trouble. Therefore, she could only grit her teeth and bear with it. In fact, it was natural that Jingwan's things were more valuable than others. She was Luo Jingwa's biological sister. Before she married into the Luo family, the two of them were close friends. No matter how you looked at it, it was natural. Except for Luo Jingying, probably no one would be jealous of anything. After the tea was served to Jingwan, it was time to go and eat. Luo Peishan left with his son and grandson. The rest of the people followed Madame Luo. However, because there were still some guests in the residence, Madame Wang left first. There was also Madame Wang, so it wasn't appropriate for her to stay for long. As a bride, Sun Yijia was supposed to serve her mother-in-law. However, since Madame Wang wasn't here, Madame Zhang should serve Madame Luo, and then she should serve Madame Zhang. However, Madame Luo didn't want Madame Zhang to pretend and let them eat by themselves. As for Madame Zhang, even the concubines of the second branch didn't let them serve her, let alone her daughter-in-law. As a result, Sun Yijia didn't even put on an act this morning. She thought about her sisters-in-law. When they got married, they served her mother food and tea. After breakfast, they even listened to her mother's various teachings. She also knew that there were only a few noble families that didn't do this. The Luo family was a scholarly family for 200 or 300 years. Didn't they know these rules? Obviously not. In fact, in some aspects, the Luo family was more strict than the Ding family. Therefore, Sun Yijia told herself to cherish her fortune. Luo Peishan allowed his grandson 3 days' leave for the sake of his wedding. What was the use of 3 days' leave? As a newlywed, it was naturally to accompany his wife. On the way back to the second branch, Sun Yijia abandoned her newlywed husband and held Jingwan's hand, unwilling to let go. Jingwan was forced to be the third wheel. However, in this place, even if they were husband and wife, if they were too intimate outside, they would be gossiped about. Therefore, Jingwan was quite comfortable being the third wheel. Yesterday, Ying Shuang didn't come. I thought she would be among the girls who were sent off. Lord Chancellor's wife is sick. Jingwan immediately understood that this was a man who valued love more than friendship. Now their courtyard was close to Jingwan's. Sun Yijia wanted to drag Jingwan to their courtyard, but Jingwan was determined to refuse. However, sister-in-law, I like these 2 beautiful maids of yours very much. Give them to me. Sun Yijia didn't expect that Jingwan would make such a request. If they were ordinary maids, she would naturally give them to them without hesitation. However, these two were evil and would lead Sister Wan astray. What's wrong? You don't want to give them to you? Jingwan said with a smile. No, it's just that. Third young lady, we are Duchess Ding. When the master is talking, it's not up to you as a servant to interrupt. Besides, once you enter the Luo family, you are a member of the Luo family. As sister-in-law's dowry, her life and death are up to her. As a servant, you don't even know your own master. What's the use of keeping you? Jingwan restrained her smile and said coldly. How could Sun Ijia not understand? Sister Wan clearly knew what these two maidservants were for. She wanted to help her get rid of future troubles. As a sister-in-law, if she asked for two maidservants from her sister-in-law, people would at most say that she was spoiled and unreasonable. Other than that, you really couldn't say anything about her. Even Duke Ding's mansion didn't have anything to say. Even if everyone knew the purpose of these two maids, and Jingwan shouldn't have them, how could she explain it to her clearly? Third young lady, please forgive me. Enough. Ijia, it's just two maids. Give them to third young lady. Luo Jingbo said. Perhaps he didn't know before, but his brothers all said that he had good luck with women. No matter how slow he was, he realized that it was better to give these two maids to his little sister. He didn't think that his little sister wouldn't be able to control them. Sun Yijia looked at the siblings. She seemed to understand something, so she nodded and agreed readily. It's your good fortune to serve Sister Wan. In the future, you must do your best. If you do anything wrong, you can deal with it however you want. I won't say a word. Sister Wan, I'll have someone send their indenture contracts later. She didn't care that a certain someone's eyes were red and her whole body was full of reluctance. Jingwan nodded. I won't see third brother and third sister-in-law out. She smiled a little ambiguously. Sun Yijia wanted to pinch her. Yijia, you go back first. I want to say something to my little sister. Sun Yijia left first. Jingwan also dismissed the people around her. Third brother, what do you want to say? I want to tell your sister-in-law about the fine brushwork and the lyrics of a male phoenix seeking a female phoenix. Little sister, didn't you always tell me that we should be honest with each other? I want your sister-in-law to know the real me. Even if I'm not as outstanding as she thinks I am, and she'll be disappointed in me, I don't care. As Luo Jingbo spoke, he smiled. I also want her to know how good your sister-in-law is to her. She's so good to her that even I can't help being jealous. Third brother, if you think you should do this, I won't object. Thank you, little sister. Luo Jingbo was unprecedentedly solemn. Although it's very boring, there's nothing I can do for you. I can only say these two words. Jingwan wrinkled her nose and nodded seriously. I accept. Luo Jingbo smiled and rubbed her head. Jingwan's eyes suddenly flashed with the image of a certain man rubbing her head yesterday. She immediately pushed his hand away in dissatisfaction. You're not allowed to touch. Luo Jingbo looked at her cute little appearance and couldn't help but reach out his devil's claws. He quickly rubbed her head twice and turned to quickly leave. Hearing Jingwan's flustered and exasperated voice, he very proudly laughed out loud. Jingwan laughed in spite of herself. The way she was now was also very good. As for where she would go in the future, she never thought about it. However, the matter of Jin Qin Wang coming to her courtyard yesterday, no one should know. Otherwise, how could there be no news at all? Turning around, she stepped into her own small courtyard. Miss, how do you want to deal with these two people? The wet nurse asked. What are the two of you called? This servant is Hong Lian. This servant is Lu Yi. Hong Lian was the one who started to be restless yesterday. On the other hand, Lu Yi had been very silent. Even when Jingwan took the two of them from Sun Yijia, there was no fluctuation in her eyes. This was the first time Jingwan heard her speak. If Hong Lian's eyes were the most seductive, then Lu Yi's voice was the most seductive. Duchess Ding really took a lot of trouble to choose these two people. Hong Lian, go to the kitchen to help with the fire. For the rest of the time, help clean the courtyard. Third miss, if you don't want to go to the main kitchen, Jingwan coldly said. Hong Lian shut her mouth. There were only a few small kitchens in the entire Luo family. The main kitchen was responsible for the meals of the entire Luo Fu. It was not an exaggeration to say that it needed to light the fire all day long. If she was sent there by the young lady, she would be trampled to death. Louis, to tell the truth, there were more and more people in Haidang elegant residence. It was really not easy to arrange. Miss, when Duchess Ding was here, this servant was responsible for taking care of the flowers and trees in the garden. Jingwan narrowed her eyes. Why did you become third sister-in-law's dowry maidservant? Fifth young master said that this servant took good care of the flowers and trees and rewarded this servant with something. This servant's voice is special, so when I thanked him, someone heard it. Lu Yi indifferently explained. Lu Yi's voice, even if she spoke with a cold face, seemed to be deliberately seductive. She approached Sun Yilin. No wonder she was suppressed and schemed against. Jingwan didn't care whether her unfinished words were consistent with what she thought. Sun Yilin's praise should be true. Then there was no doubt that she took good care of the flowers and trees. Then you take care of the flowers and trees first. As for the rest, we'll talk about it later. Yes. After Luo Jingbo went back, he directly pulled Sun Yijia into the study, saying that he wanted to teach her how to draw. Seeing that they had a good relationship, the servants naturally knew what was good for them and retreated outside. Luo Jingbo stood behind Sun Yijia, holding her waist with one hand and holding her hand with the other. Yijia, did you know that the fine brushwork is actually my younger sister's? She was the one who suggested that I bring 100 birds worshipping the phoenix as a betrothal gift. She was the one who asked me to play a male phoenix courting a female phoenix. That poem was also written by my younger sister. I'm far from the rumors outside. Sun Yijia listened quietly and didn't react for a moment. Luo Jingwa's hand on her waist tightened. It was impossible to say that he didn't care about Sun Yijia's thoughts at all. He already had feelings for her. She was the person he wanted to spend his life with. Sun Yijia turned around. Jingbo, I'm very happy that you told me all this. Really, although it's a little regretful, I believe that when you did that, you did it out of sincerity. What I really care about is you as a person. Luo Jingbo heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Then, he smiled and pressed his forehead against hers. Are you very happy? Sun Yijia smiled and nodded. Then I'll tell you something that will make you even happier. Seeing her expectant gaze, Luo Jingbo couldn't help but kiss her. I promise my younger sister that I'll only have you in my life. Even if I don't have any children in the future, I'd rather adopt than touch another woman. For a lifetime, a couple. Sun Yijia subconsciously covered her mouth. Tears quickly gathered in her eyes. Hearing these words from the mouth of the person she liked, was there anything more moving in the world than this in the world? Even if there were other factors involved, if he wasn't willing, not to mention his younger sister, even his biological mother couldn't do it. Don't cry. Luo Jingbo kissed her eyes. I owe my younger sister too much. In the future, let's treat her well together, okay? Sun Yijia nodded vigorously. She was willing to give her everything to Sister Wan. Her current happiness was given to her by Luo Jingbo. But the source of her happiness was Sister Wan. Didn't she owe her too? Perhaps it was because they had opened up, but the feelings between the two of them quickly warmed up. Moreover, as newlyweds, when they hugged each other, the flames couldn't help but start to rise. The servant girl guarding outside the door heard soft sounds coming from inside. It seemed to be getting louder and louder. Was that her young lady's voice? She blushed when she heard it. Sun Yijia's wet nurse noticed that something was wrong with the servant girl and quickly thought of something. It was really unexpected that her young lady would do such a thing. She walked over to guard the door. It was better for these little girls not to hear so much. However, before Luo Jingwa's bad things officially started, he was forced to stop. Grandfather summoned him. Because Luo Peishan took out the first 50 books of the meticulous painting book yesterday. Half of them had already been taken away. Today, more people came to visit, and there was even a painting master who wanted to see Luo Jingbo. Naturally, he had to show up. Sun Yijia met the people who originally served Luo Jingbo. To be honest, there weren't many of them. Those who were close to him were 2 head servant girls and a manservant. After he moved back to the inner courtyard, he had less contact with the manservant. The remaining people were all rough laborers. His wet nurse had stayed in cheat and manner from the beginning. Therefore, Sanija handled it very easily. Then, she arranged for the people around her to start counting and organizing the dowry. These things naturally didn't need her to do it personally. She prepared to look for Jingwan, but then, Madame Luo sent someone to invite her. She said that there were some guests in the manor and wanted her to meet them. After becoming the daughter-in-law of the Luo family, it was natural for her to meet the relatives of the Luo family. She had someone send the slave contract of Red Lotus and Lu Yi to Jingwan. The two of them split up and busied themselves. Jingwan was still very relaxed. She wrote, read, and arranged the flowers and plants. The Emolan plant had already borne seeds. One had to know that in her previous life, directly using orchid seeds to cultivate orchids had a very low survival rate after various treatments. Jingwan basically had zero chance of success here. However, with the mentality of giving it a try, Jingwan used all the methods she could use to treat the seeds and carefully plant them. The final result could only be left to fate. Jingwan had just cleaned her hands, and the water droplets on her hands were not dry yet. Miss, Madam wants you to go over. Oh? Do you know what's the matter? Jingwan put down her handkerchief. Madam knows that you asked third young madam for 2 people. If my mother knows, then basically everyone in the manor knows. Let's go. Anything that was disadvantageous to Jingwan was a big matter to Madame Zhang. When she saw Jingwan, she did not wait for her to greet her. Wangwan, why are you so muddle-headed? Jingwan smiled unconcernedly. Mother, I only asked sister-in-law for 2 people. Madame Zhang tapped her forehead with a finger. Do you not have enough servants to serve you? Quite a lot. But I liked those 2 people when I saw them, so I asked for them. They're my sister-in-law, so what's the matter? Do you really like them? Forget about ordinary maids. Why did you ask for those 2? Luo Rongyin said. Jingwan was still smiling, but the warmth in her eyes subsided. Of course I like them. What else did you think it was? Moreover, those 2 maids are just 2 people. What's so special about them? Luo Rongyin looked into Jingwan's eyes and felt a chill in his heart. His daughter was not as close to him as she was to her grandparents and her mother. He originally thought that she was close to her grandparents because they were separated by generations, but she was close to her mother because of the nature of mother and daughter. Although he was her father, he was a man after all. After she grew up, they did not have much time to be close to each other. It was impossible for her to throw herself at him and act coquettishly when they met. Now it seemed that this was not the only reason. Wanwan, do you really not know that those 2 maids are special? Then, do you want me to know or not? Luo Rongyin suddenly understood. She knew, and because she knew, she did it on purpose. Why? Why? Because you are my father, and he is my elder brother. If he is willing, I can achieve my goal. If he is unwilling, I will not say a word. I see. I thought you didn't like them, but I didn't expect it to be to this extent. Father, let's put it another way. If you were in my mother's position, and my mother was in your position, what would you do? What would I do? Luo Rongyin could not help but feel angry just by thinking about it. Mother was brought up to treat her husband as the heavens. She was raised very well. It's a pity that I wasn't raised well. Sister-in-law is my close friend, and third brother is willing. Naturally, I have to do something. Luo Rongyin looked at Jingwan. He really wanted to tell her that she was wrong. She was simply going against the norm. But when he met her cold gaze, he couldn't say a single word. If he did, the father and daughter would probably become strangers. Those 2 maids are really nothing special. Since you like them, you can keep them. Yes, his daughter just liked them. There was no other reason. Thank you, father. Jingwan's eyes gradually became warm. Luo Rongyin nodded. Go back early. Your grandmother might. Luo Rongyin suddenly stopped talking. His daughter grew up by his mother's side. No one knew her better than her mother. His mother probably knew what she was thinking, but she had never corrected her. What kind of attitude did his mother have? His mother and father had a good relationship. His father also doted on his daughter. Perhaps his father also knew. A few days ago, his father scolded him badly. He said that he was not a good father and did not spend any time on his daughter. At that time, he felt wronged. Now, It seemed that he was not wronged at all. Alas, he might be scolded again. Go back. I will take my leave. Madame Zhang was still in a state of confusion. She basically did not understand what her husband and daughter were talking about. Luo Rongyin looked at his wife. He treated his wife the same for many years because she was pure. She might be satisfied in her heart. However, in his daughter's view, she should be wronged. It was abnormal that she was not wronged. She was strangled by jealousy. Only when a person's 7 emotions and 6 desires were that part of them was considered complete. What are you talking about with Wang Wan? Madame Zhang asked. We are talking about the 2 maids. She just likes them. Since they are already with her, there is no need to care about them. It was said that ignorance was bliss. His daughter had always been protecting her mother in her own way and not letting her get hurt. I can't become a person like my son in this life. However, I will treat you better in the future. Although Madame Zhang did not know what her husband's treatment had to do with her son, she still could not help blushing. Luo Rongyin laughed in spite of himself. The roles of wife and daughter were reversed. He wasn't a competent father, and his wife wasn't a competent mother. It was all thanks to his mother that his daughter was able to grow up to be so outstanding. After Jingwan went back, she saw Yuan Xiaoqiao, who was full of energy. Wan, what are you so excited about? I heard that Cousin Jingbo played a male phoenix seeking a female phoenix yesterday. He also added lyrics. I heard several people secretly reciting the lyrics. They were all wondering why Cousin Jingbo didn't play the guqin for them. In fact, I also want someone to play it for me. Yuan Xiaoqiao revealed a dreamy expression. There will be. Although Luo Jingbo's group of brothers knew in advance that he was going to play the guqin, they also thought that he wrote the lyrics after Jingwan made a request. Except for Qin Jingmin, no one suspected that it was Jingwan. If you asked Qin Jingmin why he suspected it, he could only say that it was a feeling. As everyone expected, Luo Jingbo's unique performance was now spread all over the streets and alleys. Many people were intoxicated by it. Many people were infatuated with Luo Jingbo, this affectionate man. Even if someone scolded him for being improper, it could not stop a pile of young girls' feelings. Chapter 120. However, even if Jingwan knew about it, she would probably just pat Luo Jingbo's shoulder with a smile and say, "Third brother, it's time to test you. Don't disappoint me." Regardless of what would happen to Luo Jingbo in the future, the painting master gave him a comment after chatting with him. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Luo Jingbo hurriedly said that he was ashamed. Wasn't he ashamed? His little sister had also predicted that today's situation might occur. She had helped him think of many problems. Moreover, regarding the fine brushwork itself, she had also very carefully and comprehensively explained it to him. If he still couldn't pass the test and was seen through by others, he could probably use his death as an apology. Luo Jingbo's situation was not bad. After today's step, things would probably be smoother and smoother in the future. However, Sun Yijia's situation was not so smooth. How should she put it? Sun Yijia had been in contact with the most distinguished group of people in the Qi Yuan dynasty for more than 10 years. In the past, she had a cold personality. However, because of Jingwan, she opened her heart and gradually came into contact with more people. However, this did not mean that she could easily accept anyone. The group of people she was in contact with now was completely different from her upbringing. As soon as she came into contact with them, Sun Yijia subconsciously wrapped herself up in a cold and arrogant manner. In her eyes, she was sick of their flattery and fawning. Moreover, their behavior was vulgar and their eyes were staring at her. If they were not looking at her jewelry, they were looking at her face. In the eyes of these people, she was a disfigured woman who had married into the Luo family. Why should she pretend to be virtuous? Moreover, she was from a prestigious family. In order to gain a foothold in the Luo family, shouldn't she take the initiative to show filial piety to them? After several hints, she actually pretended not to understand. What was this? Their upbringing, ideals, and pursuits were all different. They were people from 2 different worlds and could not get along. Sun Yijia's face was cold. There was only one person like Sister Wan in this world. At this time, she also realized that she had made a mistake in the past, a huge mistake. Of course, she wanted to pursue an ordinary life. However, how many families with the same upbringing as her could be accepted by her? The people present were probably all ordinary people, but what happened in the end? Sun Yijia felt a chill run down her spine. She was glad that she had met Jingwan and married into the Luo family. This was an ordinary yet extraordinary family. She had everything she wanted here, but it did not conflict with her past. Jingwa's family can go back first, old Madame Luo said faintly after watching coldly from the sidelines. Sun Yijia glanced at old Madame Luo. She didn't seem to be angry with her, so she heaved a sigh of relief. Yes, granddaughter-in-law will take her leave. One of Madame Luo's maids sent Sun Yijia off. Third young mistress, you don't have to take what happened today to heart. Madame Luo's purpose is to let you know what's going on. As for them, just give them some face. Some people, if you take them too seriously, they won't take you seriously. Sun Yijia understood. Thank you for your advice, mother. The maid smiled. Third young mistress is Madame Luo's favorite, a treasure in her palm. Sister One deserves the best in the world, Sun Yijia said sincerely. However, if Jingwan were to hear her words, she would probably roll her eyes. All of them had been brainwashed. On the way back, Sun Yijia remembered that old Madame Luo used to have a noble status, not much worse than her current status. At that time, although the Luo family had a strong foundation, they didn't have a strong background. At that time, no one in the Luo family supported her. The situation she encountered was probably much more difficult than Sun Yijia's current situation, but she resolutely walked to where she was today. She wasn't assimilated. She was still noble and dignified, and she still had the wisdom that had settled down for decades. She wasn't worse than her grandmother, but she was more benevolent and humane than her grandmother. Most importantly, she was much more fortunate than her grandmother. However, at that time, old Madame Luo was only married to a scholar who came in third in the imperial examinations, while her grandmother was married to the powerful Duke Ding. None of the relatives in the Luo family dared to disrespect her. They even respected her from the bottom of their hearts. Old Madame Luo taught Sun Yijia a good lesson in her own way. Not long after, Jingwan also found out about Jingwan's request. However, in the end, it only caused a small ripple. Soon, peace was restored, and no one mentioned it again. As for Jingwan's father, Luo Rongyin, just as he expected, after Luo Peishan sent the guest away, he called him to the front study. He didn't scold him, but just looked at him calmly. For the first time, Luo Rongyin realized that sometimes calm was scarier than violent storms. His scalp was numb, his back was cold, and a chill ran up from the soles of his feet. Instead of a sharp sword hanging over his head, it was better to stab him with a knife. Father, whatever you brothers want to do, as long as it doesn't harm the Luo family, I won't force you to do it. You don't like officialdom. You like to be free and unrestrained. You want to be like a banished immortal. I'll let you do whatever you want. You used to spend all your time with your wife. Now all you think about is your toys. You've never taught your children well. You've never thought about your children. Since that's the case, it's best that you don't care about them. Luo Peishan's words were not harsh, but for the first time, Luo Rongyin felt the deepest guilt. Father, Luo Peishan waved his hand. I don't want to hear what you have to say. Among the four of you brothers, you're the best in all aspects, but you don't want to be an official. Your eldest brother is only at the 4th rank of the secondary class. Even if I retire, he won't be able to climb to the 3rd rank in his lifetime. However, the current situation is special. It's not a good time for him to go further. Besides, you're just brothers. Without me, no matter how high he climbs, the honor and glory will belong to his wife and son. How good can your children get? Now, in the eyes of those people, the 3rd girl is a piece of delicious fat meat. Everyone wants to eat her. If you, as her father, can be a little more reliable and give her something to rely on, she won't have to wait for others to make a decision. Luo Rongyin's lips moved, but he couldn't say anything. I've been working hard to keep our family in a neutral position in this fight for the throne, but it's very difficult to do. Even if Jingwa's wife doesn't marry into the family, the Luo family will be involved in the quagmire sooner or later. No matter how unimportant the position of minister is, it's still the head of a department. Now, on the surface, we're on the side of the Empress and Prince Kong. Noble Consort Su and Prince Rue won't let it go. They'll definitely think of ways to pull the third girl into their hands. If something goes wrong, the third girl may be destroyed by them. Those in power all have the same idea. They can't let an important chess piece fall into the hands of others. The best way is to make it disappear completely. Luo Rongyin took a breath and clenched his fists. He didn't pay attention to it and didn't expect that his daughter had been in such a dangerous situation. "Father, what should we do now?" Luo Peishan glanced at him as if to say, "You? What can you do?" At this moment, Luo Rongyin's handsome face turned red. If Min Gear didn't have that accident, it wouldn't have been like this. Otherwise, if the accident happened before Great Elder Princess' birthday, the third girl wouldn't have been in the limelight. In the final analysis, it's God's will. Luo Peishan sighed. "Tell me, what do you think? Even if you're not an official, you're not a blockhead in this aspect." As his father, Luo Rongyin was not polite at all today. Even if he was choked, he could only endure it. After thinking for a while, he said, "Either we completely side with the Empress and Prince Kong, or we stand on the side of noble consort Su and Prince Rue. We'll continue to be neutral." What he said was equivalent to not saying anything. However, those people would not give them a third choice. So, what's the specific choice? "Father, do you prioritize the Luo family or Wan? I'm asking you." Luo Peishan suddenly roared very angrily. This was the key to the problem. Whether it was the Empress or noble consort Su, in order to show enough sincerity and let them take the initiative, Luo Peishan could basically guess who would be chosen by marriage. From Jingwan's point of view, in the case of having no choice, it was best to choose the one who was the best for Jingwan. And this person, except for Sun Yilin, was the only one who was the best for Jingwan. However, Luo Peishan was not optimistic about Prince Kang's ascension to the throne. In the future, if other people ascended the throne, those who were on Prince Kang's side would definitely be purged. The Luo family would inevitably suffer, and Ding General Manor would probably be destroyed. Naturally, Wang would also suffer. Prioritizing the Luo family? Prioritizing Jingwan? Looking at the present or the future? In fact, if it were other families, this would not be a problem at all. There was no need to even think about it. Could a girl be more important than the family? However, Jingwan was different to them. They truly doted on her like she was the apple of their eye. Furthermore, Jingwan's usual cleverness made their hearts ache uncontrollably. They clearly knew that she would not be happy after marrying that person. Yet they could still helplessly watch her fall into the fire pit. The angry Luo Peishan frightened Luo Rongyin. He had never seen such a father. Was his daughter so important in his heart that she could be compared with the entire Luo family? Luo Rongyin had always thought that his father was actually a qualified scholar official. At this moment, he knew that he was not. In the heart of a qualified scholar official, the family would always be the first. Everything else could be abandoned. Even the most precious thing he cared about, he would be willing to give it up without hesitation. Luo Peishan originally just kept it in the bottom of his heart as if nothing had happened. But once he spread it out, he felt powerless and tired. "You can go back. I need to think about it. Your son will take his leave." Luo Rongyin walked out of the door and looked back at his father, who seemed to be in the shadows. It turned out that not only was he not a good father, but he was also not a good son. His daughter was standing at the edge of the fire pit. His father was anxiously pacing back and forth, and he could only watch with folded arms, unable to help at all. What's more, before this, he was very leisurely and did not notice at all. When Jingwan was trimming the flower branches to make a vase, she accidentally pricked her hand by a thorn. A dark red blood bead quickly appeared. Jingwan paused. She was obviously very careful. How could she prick her hand? "Ah, it's bleeding. Mama." Wan pricked her hand. "Quickly bring the medicine." Yuan Xiao hurriedly said, "It's okay. Don't make a fuss." Jingwan pressed her thumb and crushed the blood bead. The blood bead condensed again. Mama Gong, who had already been alarmed, naturally would not ignore it. This day, as usual, passed peacefully. The guests of the Luo family also left one after another. However, Yuan Xiao shamelessly insisted on staying. Her mother could not do anything about it, and Madame Luo also happily agreed to let her stay. Therefore, Yuan Xiao openly stayed at the Begonia house. Mama Gong directly asked the servants to prepare a room for her. A certain someone, who originally wanted to continue squeezing into Jingwan's bed, was too embarrassed to mention it. The next morning, after Jingwan got up and was about to do morning exercises, her grandmother sent someone to call her to the main courtyard. What was it that needed to be done so early? At this time, her grandfather had not gone to the morning court. Jingwan paused. Her grandfather was looking for her. Sure enough, Jingwan went to the main courtyard. Her grandfather and grandmother were sitting together waiting for her. There was no one to serve her. However, there were some bruises under her grandfather's eyes, and her grandmother's spirit was not good. They did not rest well. Jingwan greeted them. "Grandfather, what is so important?" she asked curiously. "Girl, what do you think of Sun Yilin?" Jingwan lowered her head slightly and remained silent. "Wan, you understand what your grandfather means, right?" Madame Luo said. Of course, she understood. Even Jingwan, who had not cried much when she was a baby, could not help but tear up. She hurriedly wiped her tears with a brocade handkerchief. Seeing her tears, Madame Luo instinctively wanted to comfort her. However, Luo Peishan reached out to hold her and shook his head slightly. Jingwan calmed down and said, "Grandfather, you don't have to go to this extent for me. I'm fine. It seems that you understand everything. So, how can it be that you're really fine? Even if you really think it's fine, your grandmother and I will be distressed. But gambling with the Luo family and messing up your plan in exchange for a better outcome for my granddaughter is not worth it. Besides, if Uncle and the others know about it, they will hate me to death." Luo Peishan laughed. "You know about your grandfather's plan? As a subject, it is very difficult to be independent in the fight for the throne. You have to be prepared." Wan, how would you know that grandfather did not choose Prince Kong in his plan? From the perspective of the Qi Yuan dynasty, Prince Rui is more suitable for that position. Judging from the current situation, Prince Rui has a better chance of winning. In front of the two of them, Jingwan did not hide anything. Prince Rui just has a better chance of winning, but he is still far from being able to settle the situation. Otherwise, there would not be so many people standing on Prince Kang's side. Therefore, putting all the chips on Prince Kong will only reduce the chance of winning temporarily. You may not lose. So, girl, you don't have to blame yourself. I made this decision after careful consideration. If Prince Kong really has no chance of winning, I'm afraid I can only give up on you." Having said that, Jingwan was still very grateful to Luo Peishan. If it were someone else, they would definitely choose the most advantageous path. "But, girl, do you think that Prince Rui will win?" After Meng came to the capital, she read a lot of court newspapers, but she did not express any opinions. However, even so, she should be aware of the situation. Rationally, yes, but what? Luo Peishan asked curiously. "I feel that Prince Rui will not be the final winner." Luo Peishan became interested. "So, Wan thinks that Prince Kong will have the last laugh?" Jingwan shook her head. "I don't know. Feeling was a mysterious thing. Besides, Jingwan had never relied on her feelings to confirm anything. Who knew why this feeling came inexplicably this time? In that case, Wan, just say that Sun Yilin is better. Now we still have a choice." Jingwan frowned. "Grandfather, isn't it too early to make a decision now? Girl, you know that the sooner this matter is settled, the better for you. After all, she was a girl. If she was always criticized by others, her reputation would not be good. Moreover, once he was engaged, as the fiancé, he had to protect his fiancée. In this way, he could minimize the potential threat as much as possible. But if we take the initiative to choose now and passively accept it later, it's two different things. The former will make Prince Rui target our Luo family. The latter will only target Prince Kong. It was definitely not a good thing to be hated by a powerful prince. Jingwan did not want the Luo family to be in the teeth of the storm. This matter can't be settled in a day or two. My goal is to speed up this matter. Don't worry, girl. I will find a way to get myself out of it as much as possible. Jingwan was silent for a moment. My third sister-in-law is coming back today. Let her tell young Master Sunday. Huh. Luo Peishan did not understand what she meant. Young Master Sun likes me, Jingwan said lightly. Not to mention Luo Peishan. Even Madame Luo was surprised. What do you mean? He said it himself. Although it's not kind to let him take all the responsibility at this time, it's better for him to take all the risks than to let grandfather do it. After all, he is on Prince Kang's side. He has Ding General Manor and the Empress behind him, and even everyone on Prince Kang's side. Prince Rui can't do anything to him. What she owed him now, she would pay him back in the future. Well, that brat actually ran to you and said those words. Where's his gentlemanly manners? Since that's the case, let him take all the responsibility. Luo Peishan was very unhappy. Previously, he thought that his good granddaughter was taken away by that brat Shin Jingmin. In fact, there was a wolf cub eyeing her covetously. Now, he wanted to send his good granddaughter to the wolf cub's mouth. Did he want to eat for free without doing anything? Dream on. If he didn't do it well this time, he would kill him. Li Ryu did something stupid. In a sense, he did not wrongly accuse the third girl. However, between Sun Yilin, who might be her future husband, and him, her grandfather, his good granddaughter chose him. Regarding this, Luo Peishan felt very happy. Jingwan originally felt very guilty about using Sun Yilin, but when she saw her grandfather's matter-of-fact attitude, she was quite speechless. However, what did she say to Sun Yijia at that time? She didn't want to be involved in the quagmire of Ding General Manor. Now, she was the one who jumped in. How ironic. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.